Well, a lot has happened and quite a bit of time has transpired since part four of my install. At the end of part four, I thought I had everything pretty much licked. I just had the motor finally sitting down in the motor mounts and had the exhaust manifolds off, and I had the transmission bolted up. And then I went to turn the steering wheel to see if the steering was going to clear the pan. And of course not. It would not turn to the right. It would only turn to the left. It was hitting smack dab in the middle of that pan. I had to beat the hell out of that pan to get it to go down in there. And I realized that the exhaust manifolds originally with the motor was never going to fit. And the only solution was to buy an extremely expensive pair of headers built just for this application from Schumacher, and to get a replica pan, another pan, this would be about the third one, from 440 Source with the notch built in the pan for the drag link. Even though the one I got, the last one I got, was supposed to work, it would never work. But as you can see here, I have the thing all installed with the headers, and the transmission's hooked up, the throttle linkage is done, the kickdown linkage is done. I converted the old compressor over to a Sandon style, and it runs. And the only thing I haven't got right now is a finished cross member for the transmission and a drive shaft, which I'm ready to do all that pretty quick. But a lot transpired since part four. Once I realized that I had to pull the thing out again and get all these parts, I just quit. The wife was demanding I paint the house, so I ordered these parts, stopped, spent about a month to 5 weeks painting my house and doing some other house maintenance before I got all these parts back in and painted up and started working on it again. So this is just to recap why there's been such a gap from part four to this next part. So I'll stitch all this together and try to get another video up. Oh, and also a note about that pan that I got from 440 Source with the notch. It turned out it didn't work either. I had to enlarge that notch. It just was still not going to work. I had to modify the pan, which was a whole nother ordeal. And I have that clearanced enough for it to turn now. I can steer the thing. And I got the power steering working, the power steering pump, power steering, not the pump, but the actual gear, the steering gear has to be clearanced too. You have to grind off parts of the power steering gear to get it to clear. And I had to do all that, and I modified the, I was able to get my old slant 6 fan shroud to fit on my new aluminum radiator. Well, it's not new, I've had it basically since the beginning, but I bought it and for the purpose of putting this big block in here. It was a big block radiator with the hose entrances and exits on the right spot. But with a little bit of modification, the old slant 6 fan shroud worked, but the clutch fan would not fit, so I had to use the old slant 6 fan without the clutch to get enough clearance between the front of the motor and the radiator to work. But it all turned out to be pretty nice. Now, I don't know how well it's going to cool, but I haven't run it long enough to find out. But that turned out pretty cool. Almost looks, semi-factory. I had to get a custom throttle cable because the original slant 6 cable was way too long. I mean, it was all twisted around to make it work. It might have worked, but I didn't like the way it was all kinked up to get it to fit. The overdrive cable, kickdown cable, seems to be okay and working fine, but I don't really like the way it's kind of been broken from being in storage for so long, been run over and stuff back behind on top of the transmission bag. It's got some kinks in it, but it does seem to work okay. As you pull back on the press on the accelerator, it pulls the kickdown cable forward, and that turned out okay, but that took a lot of modification of that bracket. That's like a universal throttle cable bracket that I got at AutoZone. It mounts to one of the carburetor studs. I've seen other styles, but I kind of like that one because it's so compact. I mainly wanted to talk about the pan, what a pain that was. Once I got supposedly the right pan, still had to cut it all up and weld it up to get it to work. So there's been a hell of a lot of work done since that last video number 4. And it's starting to come together. I mean, once I get all these little odds and ends taken care of, then I got to make me a drive shaft. I'm going to make my own out of these two. The one that I got with the transmission, this whole motor and transmission came out of a Ram Charger. And the drive shaft is about 3 feet long. And I need one 4 feet. The slant 6 is about 5 feet. So I got to cut down the slant 6, change the ends on it, and make my own. And then someday I may go to the junkyard when it cools down. It's too hot to go around to the junkyards and around here, and during the day you'll die. And try to find maybe a Camaro or something from the early aughts, late 90s, early aughts. I believe they're supposed to fit. They're about 4 feet long, and get one of those and put in here. But in the meantime, I'll just make my own to get it moving around so I can move the thing without having to push it in and out of the garage by hand. But I think that's about it. Only thing I can think of. But yeah, it's starting to look awesome. I'm happy with it. I can't believe how much work this has all been. I still got to get my wiper motor and my blower motor back in. I had to totally clean up my blower motor because I bashed it up so bad getting it out. I had to modify it. As you can see, I had to straighten some of it out and sand it back down. I have to sand it some more and paint it. And paint the wiper motor. I got to rewire the pins on it. There was some sketchy wiring underneath this cover, so I made me a custom cover to cover up all that nasty looking bare wires that are right there in plain sight. Sand this all down, paint it again, put new pins in here. As you can see, this was just a mess. I got some duplicate pins to repin my bulkhead connector and the connectors that go to it. I can't believe, speaking about all this, it just kind of blows my mind how much I've done on this thing to get to this point. Painted the old alternator black, blacking everything out. Got my catch can back in for the radiator. Wow. Starting to come together, and boy, you ought to hear it run. It sounds badass. You'll see it in the video. Here's my notch tacked in place. Getting ready to test fit it on the car and make sure everything's clearing for finish welded paint. There's the finished product. Not real pretty, but we get the job done. We get her done. I just finished installing the Sandon type AC compressor, and to make my own mounts and modify the ones I had. If you can see that, that's a little piece of angle iron I ground all up and cut up to fit, and then the front bracket is basically completely cut most of it away to create a half moon over to sit this compressor down in. It had to go way down and over towards the middle of the motor compared to the old mount. I think it's going to work pretty good. I like it. It's much better than the old Harley Davidson V-twin sitting up there on the top of that motor. That thing is heavy, let me tell you. Here's a comparison of how big that thing is versus my foot.